Hello, everyone. I'm here with Nikki Clifton, President of Social Impact at UPS, and she's also the President of the UPS Foundation. In this role, she oversees the company's efforts to respond to the world's most pressing social, humanitarian, and environmental needs. For years, UPS has placed social impact at the heart of much of what they do, from minimizing their environmental footprint to creating a safe and inclusive workplace for its employees, to empowering resilient, equitable, and safe communities. UPS certainly raises the bar when it comes to corporate responsibility. We're happy to have you here on the virtual stage, Nikki, as the new president of the foundation and head of social impact for UPS. We know you're busy, but we want to talk to you just a little bit about the role. And we know that although it's a new role for you, you're not new to the company. Can you explain to the audience a little bit about your background and how you became president of the UPS Foundation?
Sure. Hi, Mark. It's so nice to see you. Thanks for having us today. And we're so thrilled to be partners with the Chamber on many levels, and the Chamber Foundation as well. I was honored to accept this role in November of 2020 in the midst of the global pandemic and the race pandemic. And I've spent the last 8 months really drawing on so many of the skills and leadership opportunities that I've had at UPS. That I've developed really over the course of my 17-year career. Believe it or not, I didn't anticipate leading the foundation during this time. I was in government affairs working with your counterparts on a lot of different labor and employment related issues. And it's really been an inspiring and fulfilling responsibility to be at the helm of the foundation with my wonderful, fabulous team. We really wake up every day asking ourselves how we can make the world better and how we can improve the lives of those in our communities. And so in terms of my background, I joined UPS as a labor and employment lawyer, and I worked out of our headquarters in Atlanta. And I later moved to DC to work on government affairs issues, largely in the workforce and employment space. And so I think that my legal background has really been helpful in preparing me in this role to ask relevant questions and then to carefully listen to the answers. I think with everything that's going on right now, people really want to be heard. And as a labor and employment lawyer, our work is largely about people, really trying to understand what drives people. And I think that's really helped me to be able to be empathetic and to think through how we can best position our skills as a logistics company to really meet the most pressing needs of people. I think in terms of government affairs, the work that I did in public policy has really helped me understand the importance of your narrative and the importance of communicating your why. We did that a lot on the Hill. As you know, your strategy is only good as your communications plan. And so I think that legal background coupled with the government affairs piece and helping me build relationships has been really, really helpful in this role.
Nikki, they say timing is everything, and you accepted the position just a few months after the global pandemic was declared. Can you share a little bit about what you've learned since and how those lessons have really shaped the key priorities of the UPS Foundation moving forward?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that a little bit. You know, you're right, timing is everything. And your whole session today is about being prepared and being resilient, right? And in the session before, the team was talking a lot about equity. And what we've learned in this role, in my short tenure in this role, and looking at our strategic refresh, is that 2020, really showed us that businesses, schools, and families really did experience great loss and suffering throughout the pandemic, but it didn't affect all of us equally. And I think it's really important that societies and corporations are finally talking about systemic change, talking about the systems change that we need to really dig into to make nationwide and worldwide impact that's going to be long lasting. And so that's one of the reasons that the UPS Foundation is going to be focusing and centering our work on equity and justice. And I was happy to hear those themes throughout the panel today, the panels that you've had today, because it really is about looking at root cause and looking at what is most needed for the underserved and marginalized communities, and how can we help those marginalized communities really participate in the economy, whether it's women exporting their products, whether it's underrepresented minorities participating more in the workforce, and becoming entrepreneurs, that's where we really want to be helpful, and that's our sweet spot. And so we've carved out really 4 areas that we're going to focus on. And we frame this around the moniker HELP. It's health and humanitarian relief, equity and economic empowerment, local community engagement, which is really our UPSers and our volunteer hours, and then planet protection, which is our environmental sustainability and our global footprint. And so we're looking and centering our work through that lens of equity and justice, because we've learned that's what's going to help create a world that we all want to live and participate in.
So Nikki, I've heard this phrase and I've seen it on your website. UPS is moving the world forward by delivering what matters. Given our new normal because of COVID pandemic, what does that mean?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you know this, that we have a new CEO, Carol Tomei, who recently celebrated a year with UPS, and she has just energized our company and energized our strategy in such amazing and inspiring ways. And so this was one of the first things that Carol and my boss, Laura Lane, created in the corporate affairs group, just this new purpose statement. And moving our world forward by delivering what matters really it's the clarion call to the why of what we do at UPS. So we've been really focused on understanding what's most relevant. And in the heart of the pandemic, what was most relevant was us being the safety net when there was no safety net. When people couldn't go outside and couldn't get their products, we brought those products to their homes. And that's what mattered. Our drivers and our service providers have not shut down really a single day throughout the pandemic. And I would be remiss if I didn't give just a huge debt of gratitude to them for the work that they've been doing throughout the pandemic. Moving our world forward by delivering what matters means listening to our customers. It also means listening to our communities and really understanding how best we can help people right where they are. So I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, we worked with the Department of Agriculture and McLean Foods to deliver 27 million meals to students and to the elderly because that's what they needed the most at the time. We worked with a lot of different companies to help them rethink what they were doing and how they delivered so that they could move PPE to where it was most needed at that time. So for us, what matters is what's most important to the communities and to our customers.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the partnerships, Nikki, because whether it's with the Department of Ag or with other companies or even the Chamber Foundation and our Resilience in the Box initiative that we launched with UPS several years ago, no one organization can do it alone. And UPS has been just such a tremendous partner and willing to partner with us and others to really make great social impact. And I would be remiss not to say thank you to all the UPS drivers as well. It's not a day that goes by that I don't see one of them or even some of your competitors driving up and down my street, delivering things to our neighborhood. So it was really critical for all of us here to have them on the front line.
They are amazing, and we cannot do this. I mean, we can't give back to the communities without their work. And I say a lot of times that UPS is synonymous with communities, and you could just see that by the way the community has embraced a lot of our drivers and our service providers. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Let's get with a little more specific about COVID. When COVID started spreading first in China and then around the world, what are some of the things that UPS did specifically to jump in and help? And who did you do it with?
Sure. Well, you talked about partnerships, and our partnerships are broad and they are deep, and we count the Chamber amongst one of our most valuable partners. When the COVID-19 crisis hit, we really started looking at how we could respond immediately by designating our employees as essential workers, and we had to work with the government, both state and local, to do that. We were first responders in Asia, and then when the virus started to spread quickly, we immediately acted by getting involved with the US government from the onset, working with FEMA, working with USAID, and also our healthcare distributors. We've got a division of our company, UPS Healthcare, that I just think in terms of being prepared, you talk about preparedness. Wes Wheeler, who is the president of UPS Healthcare, had really been thinking about preparedness with respect to the health space long before we were in the midst of the pandemic. And so he had started looking at how we manufacture cold chain storage freezer farms and how we look at making sure that we were prepared, not necessarily thinking about the global pandemic, but thinking about health, period, healthcare, period. And so I think that preparedness really put us in a good position to respond. Working with the federal government, we've mobilized more than 250 flights carrying personal protective equipment around the globe. Our healthcare division also opened up a 450,000 square foot distribution center. And that's where we are housing a lot of the vaccines and able to really mobilize those vaccines very quickly out of our air hub in Louisville, Kentucky. As you know, we also partnered with the Chamber to help respond to the crisis in India. So beyond vaccines, we've also been looking at the other related components like the oxygen concentrators that we moved around the globe to make sure that our friends in India were safe. I'm also really proud, Mark, of the work that the foundation is doing with regard to equitable vaccine distribution. This again goes to the heart of our mission, right? We're of course moving vaccines on the commercial side, but on the foundation side, we're looking at how we can produce in-kind gifts to countries that are the most underserved. And so we've been first in Africa, first in Ghana specifically with the COVID-19 vaccine. And we most recently delivered one of our largest gifts in kind to date to Indonesia. We're on pace to deliver more than 20 million vaccines from a philanthropic standpoint through our network. And so we're really, really proud of that.
And we're really proud of being part of that too, Nikki. What for the audience, what Nikki alluded to in India is we were moving Medtronic ventilators, as I alluded to at the beginning of the conference, over to India, and we needed transport. And we picked up the phone and called UPS, and they responded immediately, and they helped us out. And we couldn't have done any of that without Nikki and her team, and just UPS as a company is being so committed to helping when help is needed the most. So Nikki, it's not just vaccines and ventilators that you've distributed. I mean, you're also experimenting with new technologies on distribution and delivery. We've got a few minutes left. Do you want to talk about that before we wrap up?
Sure. I always talk to my team, but before, I had the privilege of leading this team. We were led by my predecessor, who also had a great team working for him. And I've got to give a shout out to Joe Ruiz and his health and humanitarian relief team that really incubated a lot of exciting strategies from an innovation standpoint and used those strategies for healthcare distribution. And a great example of that is our drone network. We actually incubated distribution of blood and of vaccines before COVID-19, working with Zipline and with Gavi. And that drone network has really played an important role in disrupting how humanitarian health aid is being provided, especially in remote parts of the world. And so we're really seeing exciting synergies that we've been able to then create broader strategies for during COVID-19. And it's just fantastic. Like in 2019, we were able to reach about 30,000 people in businesses and communities through our vaccine shipments. That's pre-COVID. And now we're working with COVAX and with UNICEF and Gavi to help overlay that same strategy from the technology standpoint to help when the world needs it the most. And so again, it goes back to preparedness, right? Not being afraid to take risk, to thinking about what the world needs the most, and then figuring out what your special secret sauce is. In our case, it's logistics, to be able to meet those pressing needs of society.
Well, Nikki, it's clear to me that you've got a good handle on all of this, and we're so fortunate that you do. Others want more advice, right? What advice would you give these leaders and corporations as they look to build and strengthen their private-public partnerships?
That's a great question. And I think, first of all, it goes back to making sure that you build relationships early. That's one of the most valuable things I learned when I was in government affairs. I did a lot of work, in the legal department where we were working with other lawyers. But when you have to work across networks, whether it's public-private partnerships, with the government, with NGOs, it's important to build those relationships before you need something. My former boss used to say, relationships determine results. And I share that with my team all the time, because you need to be able to pick up the phone and be able to get to folks quickly and sort things out. And I think about what we're struggling with right now in terms of how to reach the most needed. And Mark, I'll give you an example of what we're doing in thinking about Haiti. We know that the situation in Haiti is very perilous, but we want to help the people that are there. And so those partnerships that we're able to build through some of our NGO partners and some of our government partners is really important to be able to read and have early intel about how we can be most helpful. I think the other piece of advice that I can give is focus on what you do best. In a lot of ways, people want to boil the ocean, and I tend to be like that because I get excited and you're passionate and you want to help everybody and you want to help and do everything all at once. And I think that where we can be most strategic is by focusing on where we bring the best value, and then sharing our skill set with others and helping ask folks what do they need, and really listening to what they need and trying to deliver that in the way that's most unique, using your own special skills. And so I think those are the three things that I would really call out as what I've learned over the last 8 months.
Well, Nikki, thank you for all of that. Are there any parting words that you want to leave our audience? You're our last speaker for this conference.
Oh my goodness. Well, I hope you're still out there, everybody. What I want to say in terms of parting words is, first of all, thank you to the Chamber. Thank you, Mark, for highlighting the work of all the partners that you focused on today. This is not easy work. A lot of times with foundations, people think you're just giving away money. And at the end of the day, our work is very strategic. We want to be impactful. And so when I think about our mission to build more resilient, safe, and just communities, that's what we want to leave our partners with, that is our mission, that's our focus, rooted in equity and justice. And so I just want to thank you and the folks at the Chamber for giving us a platform to talk about our work going forward. And we're proud to be partners with you.
Well, thank you, Nikki. We are proud to be partners with you too. And Chamber has many discussions like this, conferences and roundtables throughout the year. Hopefully soon we'll be back in person, but we would love to have you again so we can go deeper into these and you can tell and share more examples of how UPS truly is changing the world for the better.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.